I believe they're still here. I mean, going back even to the part where they genetically modified us potentially as slaves, it was very interesting the way that the Atrahasis epic describes the creation of mankind. Even when you go to the 7 tablets of creation in the Enuma Elish, one of the Anunnaki goddesses, basically, after many failed attempts of creating a perfect human that can replicate on its own, they actually had people here they were making in these cloning chambers, but they couldn't replicate on their own. They couldn't reproduce. Well, she said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an egg out of an existing hominid. I'm going to clean up the genetic material. We're going to put genetic material in from ourselves. I think it was Enki, actually, who donated his sperm. And then she put the zygote back in her own womb and then took it to full term. And that's when they actually created the first genetically perfected human, the more modern human that we are right now. Mm-hmm. In that, they also did something with the DNA because it's what they call junk DNA. Mm-hmm. That's where they disconnected the higher levels of consciousness and intellect to keep us at a specific level. But we still had long lifespans at that time. But the main goal that they did this, the reason why they started that whole project in the first place was because they were tired of doing all the labor on this planet, all the mining, all the farming and everything else. And so that's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question you had asked was?
Whether or not the Anunnaki could still be living here amongst us, basically as our rulers, as the elite bloodlines, for example.
Now that's a very good question. Now, according to the Emerald Tablets, which were written by Thoth the Atlantean, who's actually the son of Enki, okay? So he's actually obviously younger than Enki. He has been around for hundreds of thousands of years. In the Emerald Tablets, he describes going into this chamber underneath the Great Pyramid called the Halls of Amenti. And in this chamber underneath the Great Pyramid, he actually says he's descended 100 times 10, which is 100,000 years. So every so many years, he goes down to this chamber for 100 years at a time. So over the course of so many eons, he's gone down there for 100,000 combined years. So the Sumerian text is only 6,000 years old as far as we know. So based on that, we'd have to think that these gods, these people, these beings could potentially still be alive, and they could be anywhere. They could be on Earth. There's some of their offspring, because we do know that Enki married or had made it with humans. Mm-hmm. Thoth also took on a human wife as well. And this bloodline could be still here today propagating. And I really believe that's the bloodline that started the Pharaonic bloodline, which then migrated after the last pyramid war into Arabia and then into Europe. So the bloodline actually evolved over time, but they kept it along a specific route. When it got to Europe, it was the Plantagenet bloodline that is still ruling the planet until this day. And that Plantagenet bloodline is John Lackland's line. John Lackland is the King of England that signed the Magna Carta. But every single...
King John from...
Exactly.
From the Robin Hood legend.
Exactly, yes. Mm-hmm. And every president of the United States of America is related to John Lackland and that Plantagenet bloodline, which goes back to the Arabian kings, which goes back to the Egyptian pharaohs, which then goes back to the Sumerian kings list in Iraq. Think about that for a minute. The only one president that's not related to that bloodline is Van Buren.
So if we look at the nature of the Anunnaki society, and you talk about the Pyramid Wars, obviously the rivalry that existed between various even though they were half brothers, for example, Enki and they were half brothers, but there's a rivalry between them, and then their children obviously having rivalry between them, and how the children are essentially lording over different cities, right? Each city took on a personal god. What can we understand about the nature of what's happening on Earth to say that it doesn't seem like it's just one faction that's in total control? It does seem more of, yes, there are secret societies and elites, but it doesn't seem that they're always only, getting what they want. There does seem to be a bit of a conflict and a bit of a power struggle between the various, elite Illuminati, if you want to call it. Right. How would you say that we can learn about what's happening on Earth and the power struggle on Earth based on Anunnaki society?
Oh yeah, it goes all the way back. If you look in the biblical times, you have Cain and Abel, and then you can go forth from there. You have Palestine and Israel. I mean, as you go up in time, you just see these scenarios where you have this conflict going on. In the book of Deuteronomy in the Bible, when you really analyze it and break it down, you begin to realize that these wars that are going on in Deuteronomy are actually individual gods or relatives in different cities sending human beings out, kind of like we do now, to war against other cities that they've never been to destroy and pillage and bring back the riches and so forth and so on, so that this particular entity or this god can take over that land, and now he's got expanded his kingdom. And this has been so embedded into the human culture, this style or this technique of conquer, divide, and acquire. And then you still have these bloodlines, which are still here, even down the line. They're down the line, but they're still here, and they still have the same mentality, the same concept. The concept is to use humans as cattle, send them out, conquer, divide, and acquire. And they're just battling each other back and forth. There are multiple secret societies warring against each other. One of the most famous ones really right now currently is you have the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, and then you have George Soros. He has his own little society, and then you have the Rockefellers. They go head to head. I mean, Soros has done so many undermining things to them, and they've done so many undermining things to him. They've both crashed economies just on their own word and decisions that they've made in banking and so forth. But they're in a little battle as well. And even George Soros is in a battle with the United States, an undermining battle where he does things to undermine the United States dollar and things like that. So those in secret wars or behind the scenes wars are still going on till this very day.